Chief?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of the Portsmouth Police Commission. Tonight is an extra special night, not just because we get to prepare to commemorate the holiday season, but also because we have lots of recognition for the fine people who serve in our department. So we look forward to getting right to that work. We'll begin by calling the meeting to order, and I will ask one of our newest commissioners, Kate, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And before we take any other official business for tonight, I would like to ask for a motion to suspend the agenda and move up the first two items under the chief's report.
So moved.
Second. Thanks. All in favor? Aye. Okay, Chief, turning it over to you. It's reversed.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. We're going to start off with recognizing our newest police officer to the department. Kelly, if you'd like to come up here. Kelly came to us as a lateral transfer from Mount Dora, Florida, where she was a deputy sheriff at Orange County Sheriff's Office for 2 years. She is a graduate of both the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and the Valencia College School of Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Kelly and her husband look forward to starting a new chapter here in the Northeast. Are you sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kelly Shobley,
I, Kelly Shelby,
the above-named appointee,
the above-named appointee,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me
discharge and perform all duties incumbent upon me
as a police officer, constable, and night watchman of said city of Portsmouth,
as a police officer, constable, and night watchman of the city of Portsmouth,
according to the best of my ability,
according to the best of my ability,
agreeable to the rules and regulations of the Constitution
agreeable to the rules and the regulations of the Constitution
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
By virtue of the authority vested in me through the Police Commission and RSA 105-C, trusting in your integrity and fidelity, do hereby constitute and appoint you a police officer, constable, and night watchman of said city of Portsmouth, with all the power and authority, and subject to all the duties and liabilities provided by law. Congratulations. Have your husband come up and put your badge on. Next, we have some awards. To give out some of the work that our officers have done, some of the life-saving, putting their life at risk, and we'd like to honor those who have risked their lives in an effort to serve and protect our community. Recap of this incident involved Sergeant Kybird, Sergeant Tondro, and Officer Stacy. If you guys would like to come up here. I know I see Chris here, Seth. Officer Stacy's not here. This involved a suicidal subject on the high-rise bridge. On September 24th, 2021, just before midnight, Officer Stacy, along with Sergeant Chris Kybird and Seth Tondrell, responded to a report of a subject sitting on the railing of the Piscataqua River Bridge over Ranger Way. The woman was in a mental crisis, and her suicide apparent and imminent. Officers slowly approached her in a calm manner, all the while the woman repeatedly stating she wanted to die and intended on jumping. As officers cautiously approached her, they observed the woman repeatedly look down and breathe deeply. She looked down on one last time, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and started to leap forward. Sergeant Kybird and Officer Stacy were close enough to grab her as she began to jump. The officers were nearly pulled over the railing in an attempt to prevent her fall, but were able to pull her back to safety. Sergeant Tondro was instrumental in controlling the situation and handling all the communication over the radio. This allowed officers to successfully save the woman's life without too many people creating unnecessary and potentially detrimental confusion on the scene. For Sergeant Kybird and Officer Stacy's respected roles in this incident, I would award them both with a life-saving medal for exhibiting true bravery, calmness, and compassion, and they heroically saved this woman's life. Sergeant Tondrell's decision to allow Sergeant Kybird and Officer Stacy to take the lead on the call was the correct one. His exemplary supervision, calmness, and critical thinking during this tense call for service without a doubt positively impacted the outcome of the life or death situation. I award Sergeant Seth Tondro with the Honorable Service Medal for his actions that evening. Congratulations. Seth?
Thank you. Congratulations. Our next awards are going to go to an incident that involved on Reese Ave. If we can have Sergeant Kaltenborn come up, please. Officer Arthouse, Denman, Dente, and Conroy, and Meyer. This one's a little bit along the story, so bear with me. On October 2nd, Officer Meyer was dispatched to speak with a victim of a domestic violence who was seeking shelter at the Portsmouth Fire Department. There, the victim reported several crimes that ultimately led to the decision to arrest the suspect involved. The victim had fled from her apartment in fear, and the suspect remained alone inside. Messages were also sent to the victim by the suspect indicating his intent to commit suicide and threats to burn down the apartment. The suspect involved had several warrants for their arrest and has a history of violence and resisting. It was unclear if any of the other apartments were occupied. Based on the current threat and danger posed by the suspects starting a fire, Sergeant Kaltenborn determined that police action needed to occur immediately as there was no time for delay. The suspect also made statements that if he saw police, he'd commit suicide. Officer Meyer was responsible for the initial fact gathering and sharing of the crucial information.
as it gave officers a sense of the critical and time-sensitive nature of the decisions that would follow. Sergeant Kaltenborn assembled a team of officers, including Master Patrolman Outhouse, Officers Denman, Dente, and Conroy, to make entry into the apartment. Using a key, Sergeant Kaltenborn, with the help of Officer Denman, opened the door to the apartment, which had been barricaded. Several verbal commands were issued through the open door for the suspects to come out. There was no response, only loud music could be heard from the apartment. Officers armed with lethal or less lethal options eventually entered and cleared the immediate room. Suddenly, without warning, the suspect emerged from a back bedroom and advanced towards the officers, all while holding a large knife in a threatening manner, yelling out expletives. Multiple commands were given to the suspect to drop the knife, but he refused and threatened suicide by cop. Officer Denman, while holding the suspect at gunpoint, was able to retrieve and deploy his taser, which struck the suspect, but had minimal effect. Officer Dente, too, deployed his taser, striking the suspect, which caused him to fall to the ground. It also had a minimal effect. While the knife is still in the subject's possession, the subject turned it on himself, slashing his own neck and throat, which caused substantial damage and heavy bleeding. Officer Conroy deployed his taser to try and stop the suspect from further harming himself, momentarily incapacitating him. Officer Dente and Denman immediately moved in to handcuff the suspect. As they moved closer, the suspect slashed at the officers with the knife, causing them to back off. Officer Outhouse then deployed his taser, which had an effect, allowing Officer Dente the opportunity to kick the knife out of the suspect's hand. After handcuffing the suspect, Officer Denman and Dente immediately and without delay started rendering medical care to the significant laceration to the suspect's neck. The suspect was bleeding profusely and losing consciousness. Officer Dente applied direct pressure to the wounds, and Officer Denman retrieved his blood clotting agent and packed the wound, which slowed the bleeding. Due to the severity of the injury and massive blood loss, these wounds would have been fatal if it were not for the immediate medical care rendered by Officer Denman and Dente. Sergeant Kaltenborn called for the fire department to respond once the scene was safe. Officers Denman and Dente continued to treat the suspect's wounds until paramedics arrived. As officers cleared the remainder of the apartment, Officer Outhouse discovered a burner on the kitchen stove that was turned on. It was indicative of the suspect's intent to burn down the building. The suspect was transported to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery. The surgery was successful and the suspect survived. Based on the above circumstances regarding this incident, the following awards and commendations will be given. Officer Denman and Officer Dente, the Meritorious Service Medal Award. Officer Outhouse and Conroy, the Honorable Service Medal. Letter of commendation for Sergeant Kaltenborn, and a letter of recognition for Officer Meyer. Congratulations on a great job done in saving his life. Is Dean not here? Tim?
I know. I want to be in the background. I think you should have so you can get to see one.
Mark? So here. Got letters here. Next, I'd like to announce we made 2 recent promotions to detectives. After a competitive selection process which included an oral board before ranking officers in the Portsmouth Police Commission held on October 23rd, it was a decision of the board that Charlie Razors and Matt Ferguson should be promoted to special detail position of Detective Investigative Division. So just to recognize them. Come on up. I already got your pictures. I'll read a quick bio on each one of them. Detective Charlie Razors. Charlie's been here for 16 years with the police department, having started his career in 2005. He's spent his entire career in the patrol division, most recently as a master patrol officer. Charlie has experience as a field training officer, motorcycle officer, and has served on the Portsmouth Police Honor Guard. He's currently an assistant team leader on the Seacoast Emergency Response Team, a steward on the Portsmouth Police Patrol Officers Union, a firearms instructor, defensive tactics instructor, use of force instructor, and a driving instructor. Detective Razors is also a recipient of the Portsmouth Police Department's Life-Saving Medal and Medal of Valor. He has received many letters and awards for his police work over the years and is well qualified to make contributions to our investigative division. You want to come up for a picture, Charlie? Good work. Detective Matt Fredrickson. Matt is a Portsmouth native, born and raised in the former Peace Air Force Base. He's a graduate of York High School and the University of Maine at Machias. Matt has begun his career in law enforcement in December of 2009 with the Portsmouth Police Department. In addition to his patrol duties, Matt also currently serves as a driving instructor and a member of both the Portsmouth Drone Unit and the PPRA Pipe and Drum Band. Matt has received letters of recognition for exemplary police work, and we know the investigative division will benefit greatly from his tenacity and skill set. Congratulations, Matt. Next, I'd like to recognize our records manager, Nicole Papiano, who was just recently, after 25 years of service, decided to hang it up. She can't take us any longer, so she's on to better, nicer pastures. Nicole was our most senior full-time civilian employee, having joined the department in October of 1996. On October 28th of this year, she celebrated 25 years of service to the Portsmouth Police Department. In her role as records manager, she was answerable to the state of New Hampshire for protection, release, and management of personal information we have a record on. She was without a doubt meticulous, taking the guarding of people's personal records very seriously. This year, Nicole decided it was time to retire and enjoy all that she's worked so hard for over the years. Her institutional knowledge and vivacious personality will be sorely missed. On behalf of the men and women of the Portsmouth Police Department, we'd like to thank you for your honorable years of service. Nicole, come on up. Huh? Oh, Jesus. Where's the memo? Okay. So, do we have awards? I'll do it. And before we continue with the commission, the last I'd like to recognize is dispatchers. We've had a staffing shortage in our dispatch, and we've had some integral dispatchers who've had to work an unlimited amount of overtime to keep our dispatch center operating. We've had some police officers and some firefighters and part-time employees that have helped out in there, but we have several that have gone over and above the expectations for what we would think is a good employee, and I just like to recognize those dispatchers, Ed Walsh, who I see here, Tori, and Jason, also Supervisor Matt Steele. Thank you guys for all coming out and supporting our officers and your family members. You're probably not going to want to stay for the rest of the police commission meeting, but you're more than welcome. So.
No, and before you depart, just on behalf of the commission, I would like to thank you all for your exemplary service, for your steadfast commitment, which has enabled promotion and new opportunity, and for new commitments for folks coming to the community to serve and ensure public safety. We had hoped to do something like this sooner, but obviously COVID has prevented us from doing this kind of promotion and acknowledgement before today. But we appreciate very much the sacrifice and service you all have committed to this community, and we appreciate all your efforts. So wish you all the very best and a very happy holiday season. Thank you so much. So we'll get us back on track in terms of the agenda items. That was way more fun than the rest of this stuff.
Usually it's just us talking to the podium.
Telling you, if we catered this.
Great job, Chief. That was terrific.
City council, or is it a lot more people for city council? Yeah.
There would be some nights where it'd be packed, and then other times when 2 or 3 people. It really depended on the agenda. Okay, so we'll resume the standard agenda and go back to acceptance of the minutes. And I know you all weren't in attendance at the meeting on October 26th, but I would need a motion to accept those minutes.
I moved that the minutes be accepted.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye? Aye.
Technically, I should probably abstain since I wasn't there.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's one.
Okay. And then we have, our next item on the agenda is public comment. I see 2 dedicated community members. We're here for the celebration, so come on up. Lisa, nice to see you.
Nice to see you all. Good evening. So I had a couple of comments and points that I wanted to make. So Lisa Wolford, for the record, 111 Newcastle Avenue. I wanted to be sure that there was quick follow-up on the items that Stephanie Hausman, Marta Hergen, and I worked with the commission, and the commission adopted. One of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is data collection. It is the Oh, thank you. It's the cornerstone of all the work that we did, and it's going to be probably the most challenging to implement and execute. And so I'm really hoping you focus your attention on the new CAD system and how the CAD system will be built out to accommodate all of the data collection data points that the commission has agreed to move forward on. Data collection also within the prosecutor's office is something that should be encouraged and monitored, and I mean, everything on the list needs to be followed up on, but those are a couple of the things that I think really need careful attention. I noticed that the website doesn't yet have all of the documents that the commission agreed to publish. I know that's really time consuming for the department, but I counted today, I think there are 138 SOPs. We've got probably a couple hundred that are missing, and also missing is an index of all the SOPs that would allow the public to understand which SOPs are published and which have been withheld. I thank the department for including a memorandum of understanding with regard to the school resource officer, but it is an MOU for the 2017-2018 time period, so we need to make sure that we have the ones up to the current time. So those are sort of the highlights that I wanted to hit on that issue. I also, because there are 2 new commissioners, I thought I would take this opportunity just to ask you to challenge your assumptions about the work that you all are doing. This goes for the chief too, and the status quo. Government is a bureaucracy. Bureaucracies love to hang on to practices that may not anymore be effective or supported by the data. And when I was doing the work with the chief and Commissioner Onosco and Steph and Marta, one of the things that really leapt out at me was, is this just like a little footnote kind of a thing, but it has stuck with me. The fact that traffic stops and monitoring do not accomplish the goal that the communities think it does, or yeah, communities think it does. So we think that we send officers out to sit on streets and wait for people to speed, and certainly we shouldn't encourage speeding. That's not what we shouldn't let people go for speeding. That's not what I'm saying. But it does not, the research indicates, in fact, reduce traffic violations. So I heard a lot through the course of our work over now a year and a half and counting, that a lot of department resources are spent on traffic monitoring. I urge you, it's just sort of one little thing that the data suggests doesn't do what you want it to do. And I'll just also mention, I mean, just actually, I'll skip that. Well, no, I will tell you. I do a lot of work in the special education realm, and so I work with schools. Schools are also bureaucracies, and it is astounding to me how I find that, for example, preschoolers are being restrained, secluded in padded rooms that they're shut into, and suspended. I mean, these are 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. The data is clear that that kind of treatment does not produce good outcomes, and yet these institutions keep doing it. So just another example of how government becomes so wedded to practices that they've been accustomed to implementing that just no longer make sense. The last thing I wanted to say, and I hope that you sort of challenge your assumptions when you go into the budget session as well. I mean, there's a lot of research on school resource officers and the efficacy of SROs, for example. The last point I wanted to make was just about right to know. I think, as all of you know, I worked at the Attorney General's office, big bureaucracy. Not saying I didn't enjoy my time there, but one thing that was remarkable to me about right to know and the agency's response is that people who work at these agencies have a strange instinct to protect the information. It is not entirely rational, but it does seem to be the default that, no, well, we have this information, we have to keep it. The Right to Know statute is an incredible statute. We don't have our democracy without transparency, and even when we talked a lot about the non-disclosure agreement aspect of settlements against the police department. Even when victims are concerned, there are ways to protect victims by redacting, for example, but the default always has to be transparency. And so those sorts of concerns should never, they should be addressed, they're important, but ultimately they shouldn't trump disclosure. So thanks to you all for your service, and I wanted just to say about the following through on our, what did we call them? On the recommendations that the commission adopted. It would be great if there were some sort of timeline that you came up with. I haven't thought through what that would look like, but I think you probably need to have more of a concerted effort and produce a working timeline than just to sort of go about things piecemeal. So thanks again, and I'll see you all soon. Happy holidays.
Thanks, you too. Thanks, Lisa. Come on up, Bill.
Bill Downey, 67 Bow Street. Good to see everybody, and congratulations to the new commissioners. This is nothing as dramatic as what the chief explained about those heroic officers, but I just wanted to bring into on the public record, rather than just email, that I believe it was Officer Wells. His performance on Election Day was spectacular. We had an episode where there's this kind of kooky guy that was handing out some literature, kind of spooking some people. I think you know how passionate I am about that sort of thing. It was very intimidating. So at any rate, I wasn't having it. Called our old buddy Joe. He told me to call Kelly. She got the officer down, and he did an impeccable job, Chief. He represented you quite well. He listened really well, which in any profession is always sometimes hard to find. But he did a nice job validating us. He confronted the guy, and he came back to explain to us what was going down. The guy was back at it, doing his thing. So I just think that in these times where you hear a lot of negativity on social media and people getting beat up, that we also need to hear affirmation and a job well done. So I just think he's a real asset to the organization. And again, nothing as heroic as we heard tonight, but I think every little bit works, and I just wanted to mention that tonight.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Good night.
Happy holidays.
You too.
Okay, seeing no one else here for public comment, we'll close the public comment portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to Police Commission business. First, I would love for our newest commissioners to introduce themselves for anyone watching at home. This is our first meeting as a newly constituted commission. These are the three of us who will represent you in the coming 2 years. For those of you who may be wondering why it's happening in December and not in January, we had Commissioner Arnosco resign early because he moved out of the area, sadly, back in November. And then Commissioner Hart was gracious enough to step down a little early so we could constitute this new commission right from the get-go. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Commissioner Scher to introduce himself and give you all a sense of who you've recently elected.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaheen. I'm Buzz Scher. I've been living in Portsmouth for 25 years. I've been working in the criminal justice system in New Hampshire for the last 40 years. I'm a law professor at UNH School of Law in Concord, former chair of the ACLU of New Hampshire's Board of Directors, and a long-time social justice activist in New Hampshire. I've done a lot of work in the legislature, but I think in terms of making the criminal justice system work, it's best done at the local level, and I look forward to working with the chief and fellow commissioners.
Thank you. And Commissioner Coyle.
Good evening, I'm Kate Coyle. I have a lawyer who's been practicing in criminal law for nearly the past 15 years. I worked as a public defender for the start of my career, and more recently I prosecute for a number of towns in Rockingham County. So I'm hoping I can use some of my experience both as a public defender and a prosecutor to serve the commission and serve the community. So thank you.
I look forward to working with both of you in the coming years. So with that, we do need to appoint a new clerk for our commission because Commissioner Hart had served in that capacity. And so I would like to nominate Commissioner Scher to step into that role, and we'll need a second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for stepping up to that responsibility. And now we'll turn it over to the chief and Karen on a facilities update. How are things going? What do we got?
We're still working through it. Again, as we continue through the remediation, we keep finding new issues. So as they pop up, we're addressing them, and but as I said, we're progressing slow but steadily. That's pretty much the update on the facility.
Okay. And again, just for the folks at home, we continue to put this agenda item on the agenda because the department itself is no longer serving the purpose it needs to, and it's become, in some cases, a real hazard for the folks working in the space. So the city's been diligently trying to work through the needs of the space to get it up to date, up to code, and without water in the ceiling. And we'll continue to work at that effort. But we're going to keep it on the agenda until we have facilities that actually are meeting the needs of the department. The last item under the Police Commission business is community engagement update, and we heard earlier this evening from one of the citizens who was instrumental in putting a series of recommendations together for how we can best ensure transparency and engender trust in the community in our department. I think for those of you who were watching earlier, the show of support for the men and women who were acknowledged tonight within the department is a true testament to the caliber of folks we have the privilege of getting to work with. There were also lots of points raised in the public comment period, which we don't necessarily need to discuss now, but I think were important suggestions. One of which is putting forward a timeline on the recommendations. Now, we've looked at that, we've talked through it. There are some things that are driving the timetable. For example, on the data collection priority, we're upgrading our software system. And Chief, when we last discussed that, my understanding was we were preparing to issue RFPs, and then we have a selection process for the vendor that would build the software. And you just speak to the timeline for that.
Yeah, so we're at the point where that RFP is going to be going out, probably by the end of next month, and then we'll be going through the selection process.
Great.
If I could ask,
Yeah, go ahead.
what are the kinds of things you're looking for in terms of the selection process and a vendor?
So we've already had some demos from several different vendors, so now that we've refined what specifically we're looking for and the data that we'd like to be able to collect, you know, some that was mentioned by Lisa, having a select few companies that we've already seen come back and refine their roles and be specific in an exact type of data that we're trying to, you know, the encounter data is a big topic one, and then the best ways of going about collecting that is the easiest and can streamline through our department.
And I think it's worth reinforcing too, because we have new members. This is a whole CAD RMS system, which is needed to upgrade for a long time. It will make our dispatch work more efficiently. It will change the nature of the kinds of data we can collect and then track. So it's a big infrastructure investment and improvement in the way in which the department's able to work. But it's not, I mean, we're pushing full speed ahead. We've been pushing on this process to identify the vendors who are qualified to do the work. But it will take some time to get the RFP back and follow that process through.
And it's been a long process, but I think we've been very thorough in it. We've been, you know, going down to the granular size of it and how it affects each individual member in the department to get feedback, you know, on the good pluses and minuses of what we have and what needs to improve, so that it respectively works for all the individual departments as well, because this is a long-term fix and not just something that we're going to be, you know, kicking the tires on.
Do we have a target date by which we want to have made the selection? Generally or specific?
I think, you know, we have, you know, like I said, within probably January, it'll be out. We'd like to have someone selected probably within a month from then, but, you know, obviously would align with timing of everybody's availability.
And just to give perspective, we haven't done this in 20 years.
20 years.
So, I mean, this is a massive undertaking, which is well overdue and in desperate need of, but it is a big undertaking.
And once the selection is made, understanding how massive the undertaking is, and I'm very pleased that the department has decided to go down this road, because I think it may be the only department in New Hampshire that is really taking this on as aggressively as you are. Once select a vendor, do you have a general sense of is the implementation going to happen step by step, department by department, or is it going to be one big?
They'll build the system and then we'll have to, but there's a data conversion to bring all of our old data into it. Like, all that's gonna have to be done before we turn it on here.
And then training.
Is that a year process?
Depending on which vendor you ask, it
Yeah.
can be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months. So it all depends on how big of the project that we finally choose and how much data that we wanna convert.
And I would, understanding I'm new to this, although I have some experience in helping organizations improve their data collection, I would encourage as much as possible to be as expansive, or to select a vendor that provides a system that'll work for 10, 15 years rather than a 5-year system.
Oh, yeah, we're looking, it'll be long-term.
It's a massive investment.
20-year
Yeah.
fix, so at least.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, one of the challenges which was articulated and raised by Lisa about establishing a timeline is that on the one hand, you have a priority like the CAD RMS system, which could take as much as 18 months to actually be utilizing its full capacity. And on the other hand, you have things like making sure SOPs are up on the website. So there's there's lots of other examples. For example, another one that immediately comes to mind is, response team, diversifying response team, and that's tied to the state's commitment to rolling this out through the mental health, regional mental health centers. So, some of those things are in our control, some of them they're not, but it's a fair point that we should reevaluate the list and figure out what time tables we can tie to which recommendations. So with that, we should also think as a group, Joe was the person chairing that committee work because of Right to Know, we all can't do it together unless it's a formal meeting. So, that's another thing we'll have to talk through, who wants to take that on. And
For what it's worth, I'm willing to step up, assuming Commissioner Coyle doesn't have a deep and burning interest in that.
I don't mind doing it, but if you're interested, that by all means.
Well, I think maybe what we could do is look through the recommendations, because there are, I was working on diversifying response team with Stephanie Hausman, so there's ways in which we might be able to divide and conquer, so we're not one person's carrying the full load. All right, any other police commission items that aren't added that either of you would like to raise? Okay, with that, we'll go on to grants and donations. Back to you, Chief.
All right. The first grant is the federal ICAC grant. It's a grant award from the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $418,549 for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force in New Hampshire. A motion will need to be made to accept the ICAC grant.
So moved.
Well, just for clarification, do we need to say it exactly as it's on here?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Buzz, could you actually read the motion?
I'd make a motion to accept the ICAC grant from the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $418,549 and forward this to the city for their city council for their action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so just for those at home, it's worth reinforcing because the acronyms sometimes can get confusing. ICAC stands for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and we have the fortune of being able to run this task force for the entire state through our department here in Portsmouth, which has been a tremendous asset, I believe, to the citizens of Portsmouth. And also during this time when we have young people very much at risk given the amount of screen time required just to get through the day these days. The caseloads are higher than they've ever been. The tips that have come in through ICAC are in greater number than ever before. So this work has never been more pressing and important. And I think it's worth reminding folks who may be watching at home that this work happens here in Portsmouth on behalf of the entire state, and we're safer for it. So, all right, donation number 1, Chief.
Donation number 1 in the amount of $300 from the Seidel family from Iowa for the Portsmouth Police Department. They wrote a letter to the department saying, during our month-long visit, you have all been so wonderful. We love your community engagement, care, and positive impact you all are making. You are another great reason why we want to move here. Thank you for everything you do. Signed from the family, and they donated $300 to the police department. That we're asking for acceptance, and if you can read the action.
I would move to accept the $300 from the Seidel family from Iowa for the Portsmouth Police Department, and that we forward this to the City Council for their action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I say, come on over, Seidels. The primary is way more fun than a caucus. We know how to do it here. Number 2.
Number 2 is a donation of a $10 gift card to Dunkin' Donuts from the Rollins family for the Portsmouth Police Department.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to accept the $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift card for the Portsmouth Police Department and to forward to the City Council this donation for their action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 And donation number 3 is in the form of 5 $10 Starbucks gift cards, 5 $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, and 6 $25 gift cards to Cafe Von Salon.
And I move that to accept the 5 $10 Starbucks gift cards, 5 $10 Dunkin' Donuts gift cards, and 6 $25 Cafe Von Solon gift cards for the Portsmouth Police Department, and to forward to the City Council these donations for their action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 And thank you to the anonymous citizens who were generous in coming forward with those gifts. Okay. Monthly traffic stats.
Moving on to the traffic stats. For the month of October and November, you're going to see a significant uptick in motor vehicle stops, and I know Lisa noted that she feels, in her opinion, that traffic enforcement may not be the best use of our resources, but throughout the years since I've started here, the number 1 issue of the residents of our community has always been motor vehicle stops and traffic activity and people complaining of, speeding. So this is a reflection of the enforcement efforts that we have put forward. In October, there was 337 motor vehicle stops, 17 summonses, and 36 reportable motor vehicle crashes. In the month of November, that number went up to 605 motor vehicle stops, 40 summonses, and 40 reportable motor vehicle crashes.
Chief, can you speak to the incident that occurred, I believe it was right before the holiday parade, where there was a car that ended up in Market Square?
Yeah, so that night of the holiday parade, you're talking about the one that was up on the sidewalk?
Yes.
It was a person, thankfully it was like 3 o'clock in the morning after the event was over, and it was about everybody had gone home, but they were arrested for driving while intoxicated and continued through the square from Pleasant Street right up onto the sidewalk and almost hit in a tree. So this time of the year, especially, we see an uptick in people maybe having a little bit too much to drink and trying to operate their vehicles, but we're effectively out there. We put extra patrols on during the holiday seasons just to try to discourage people from driving. Part of the issue, I know, just because of the pandemic, is there's not a lot of taxis or Uber drivers around, so people are taking the risk at their own hands, and we're pushing for people to find alternative methods of transportation or have a designated driver, because we don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Well, and I think this was particularly poignant to me because we've heard of the terrible experiences in other communities where, you know, a vehicle careens through a parade and parade goers are injured, and the timing of it was just so striking. And I know we've gotten questions from community members about PD response and presence at these kinds of gatherings, the Halloween parade, the holiday parade. And I do think at some point it would be worth, you know, just helping people understand the reason these large PD vehicles are present is to try to help mitigate any potential risk to public safety in these large, when large groups of people are gathered in public spaces that are hard to protect. So at some point, maybe we can talk more about that in a public meeting.
Out of curiosity, well, more than curiosity, can you loosely, I'm not asking for exact percentages or numbers, of 500 traffic stops, generally how many of those are for speeding, or how many of those are, running stop signs, that kind of traffic violation, how many are for DWIs, and how many are for tail light out, mechanical failures of some sort on the car? Do you have any sense of that breakdown?
I couldn't break that down off the top of my head, but we could find out those numbers.
One of the reasons I ask is, and I'll circulate this to everybody, to the chief and to the members of the commission, there's a police department out west who is experimenting with, instead of ticketing people for mechanical violations, that they are requiring them by a certain period of time to get it fixed and mail in something that shows that they've gotten it fixed.
I can say our officers have the discretion that when they do stop people for, say, those minor offenses, sometimes they do give them timelines to get things rechecked. And everything's, independent on that particular stop and that particular officer, but those are things that we already do.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on the traffic stats? No. Moving on to financial report. Drum roll, Karen.
We're currently tracking about 2.5% below the 2.5% below the cap for the November period. Normally we're about 4% below the cap at this point, but we've had so many challenges this year with military deployments. As the chief mentioned, the dispatch center has required quite a bit of overtime coverage in there. I see the nitty-gritty of the payroll, and I can't believe the number of hours that these people devote to their job. I mean, they're working multiple 16-hour shifts a week just to cover in there. The firefighters are getting up to speed, and they're almost ready to come on board full-time, but again, the core dispatchers in there put in quite a few hours right now. I don't know when they sleep. We've also this year had some unexpected expenditures. We've had some forensic software that we had to purchase this year. It was purchased by the grant last year. We didn't anticipate keeping it, but we need to. Lieutenant Kinsman was able to negotiate a partial year contract with them, so at least we can cover part of it, even though it was unexpected. And next year we'll have an $18,000 increase just to cover that maintenance agreement, which is typical of a lot of our police software. We keep adding and adding and adding. Chief didn't say it, but I'm the one prepping the RFP. And what we did is we took all the RFPs from multiple different vendors. We took the state police one, we took multiple area RFPs, and we put them together by all the different categories. And we are doing it, we have it so that, you either have it, it's in development in your product, excuse me, or you're not going to do it, and then any comments. So there'll be kind of a scoring sheet in that respect. And then in reference to what the lady said today, they gave us a data collection guideline. I don't know if it's from California or whatever. We are including that in the RFP so that they understand exactly what we're going for. So in terms of data collection, it'll be on the vendor to prove that they can do or not do what we need to do. So just to let you know on that. Let's see. In terms of budget season, The strategic plan is the first thing that we do in preparation for our budget, and we're going to be hitting the ground running with that. We should be getting our marching orders from the city manager and the city council in reference to our budget season. Our public hearing on our budget is usually mid-February, so we've got a lot of work to do before that. And basically, we meet with every division, department, program, just to get all the things that we need in the strategic plan, and then we kind of decide what's going to be in what year and budget from there. So at least there's some
Can I
guide.
jump in for a second?
Yep.
On that? What's the role of the commissioners in that budget process? Do we act at the end, formally act at the end to approve or not approve, or is there involvement as it's being built?
I was going to say both.
Yeah.
We basically, we have our core costs. We're going to keep 68 officers, all the core costs, the paper, everything. And that's basically our status quo budget, what we need to operate at the current standing. Then we usually put in for an officer or a civilian or whatever's needed. That's been identified usually in the strategic plan years out. Example, Captain Paraki wanted a youth advocate, I think. He didn't get it yet. He wanted a family services section. He was able to do that with no cost. So he's got that piece. And so we're kind of building back what we used to have, 20 years ago. So anyway, so again, it's a lot of discussion with the people. We call all that data, call all that information, and then we prepare a budget. If we want anything extra, or if you want to, recommend something extra, that's usually over and above the status quo budget. The city manager usually asks for your status quo and then things that the council can, allow. They prepared a document one year, everybody put in their extra stuff, and the council actually was able to give a little bit to every department, which was nice, over and above our status quo budget. But basically, we'll pull the strategic plan data together, and then we'll start meeting, and then we'll pull the money piece together and meet more on that. And the public hearing is just that, it's the beginning. People can comment, we can change things. Our budget isn't usually due to the city manager until, I think, March, so that they can get it prepped for April. So we have some time to, decide what we want to do.
So could I just give you an example to that point about the CAT RMS? So, and this priority for software improvements and increase has been in the strategic plan for years.
Yeah.
And has accelerated as both the old system is so dated that we can't update it and upgrade it, and as our priorities have shifted relative to needing to collect things like encounter data. So we work to refine the priorities relative to what's in the strategic plan.
Got it.
Correct. In terms of grants, you just accepted the ICAT grant, and currently we don't have any new applications in, but the city manager just sent us one from the Department of Justice, and then one of our vendors actually sent us one in reference to the CAT RMS system, so we're going to take a look at that.
Karen, one thing that has come up, and Kate, feel free to chime in, is the ARPA funds and our engagement with the city and helping determine how those funds will be prioritized. Can you share how you've been engaged in that process?
I think it would be meetings with the chief. He'd probably be able to respond, but they looked for priorities from every single division and department, and then they go from there.
Great. So we've had
The city manager had invited all the department heads and asked for any type of request that may be able to meet the guidelines, the criteria of the ARPA funds.
And then the city council or the city manager makes her recommendation to them, I guess.
And what's the timeline on when those recommendations are going to be brought forward?
Well, I think the first allocation was already, I think we were in a meeting and that was already dispersed, and then the new funds are coming in.
Did we receive any as part of that disbursement?
I don't think any of the money has been dispersed yet, but I
was gonna
think
say,
there's
I think it's for the building,
building and HVAC system,
yeah.
improving the HVAC system, but that there's different
Criteria.
departments or criteria that is getting used for us throughout the city, you know, but I think the majority of our piece right now is on facilities updates and the HVAC system.
And that's worth reinforcing for the new commissioners also. So when, you know, the city goes through, much like our own strategic plan for the department, the city goes through a planning process for community improvement monies. And so the capital improvement monies, and this space has been in that plan, the capital improvement plan, for certain allocation every year. And we've far exceeded what had been in some of those early year plans because of the constraints with the department, the physical issues with the space. So that's the kind of thing where, you know, my understanding with the ARPA funds was it was helpful to be able to put money into a place that theoretically is a one-time.
Right. And we're looking to
investment
see
where-
if the new CAT-RMS and parts of that could qualify for some of the funding.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yep, all set.
Yeah, the cap. You're okay.
I think it's like, for some of the data collection,
Right.
it seems like ARPA might be, this would fit directly within what the ARPA, the, you know, goals of ARPA are, right? To show disparate, or find and redress disparate impact.
Right.
Yeah.
And we already covered the facilities.
Yep.
Anything else for you on financial report?
No, it's just when we're talking about the CAT RMS, and we've had it in the CIP, we've already accumulated, because we've been doing a little bit every year. I think it's about 400,000 toward a $1.3 million product. So we're going top tier this time.
Great. Very, very
Yeah.
significant investment. Necessary and significant.
Yeah.
All right, miscellaneous other business, anything else we want to discuss? Normally, just for the new commissioners, the patrol division and the court office report, unless there's something specifically time sensitive, we don't necessarily cover it in the meetings. Any other business? All right, well, before we adjourn, I'd like to let everyone know that the next commission meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 18th. And always check the municipal meetings calendar for important dates. As you just heard from Karen and the chief, we've got lots of work to do at the start of the new year. And I wish everybody a very happy and safe holiday season. Don't drink and drive. Get vaccinated. Stay healthy.
Get boosted.
Get boosted. And happy holidays. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Thank you.